What's up, skaters? This is Roller Ghoulie or Carly Craig, and we are going to talk about air to fakie. What is air to fakie? So just to explain what trick we are talking about that we're going to do a little tutorial of today, basically it's when you're rolling up a ramp facing forward and you're going forward in that direction and you lift your feet off, you air, and then you land back down and you're still facing the same direction, but now you are skating backwards as you roll away. So you're going forward, you're airing, and you're coming back down, skating fakie. Fakie means you're backwards. Air to fakie can be a beginner up to an advanced trick depending on how far you want to take it. It's one of my favorite tricks because you can do so many variations of them, and you could do them under the coping, over the coping, on really tall ramps, on small ramps. So there's a lot of room to kind of play with these and build them up as you progress. There's a few key things that will really help boost your air to fakies, but I first want to break down the basics. You want to be fairly comfortable pumping up and down a ramp, since you will be pumping up forward and then pumping down fakie or backwards after you land the trick. It's best to be comfortable with both of those positions so that you're learning the trick safely. Just a fair warning, it is possible that you could get hung up on the coping every once in a while. Accidents do happen sometimes. Usually when it happens to me, nothing terrible happens, but I do recommend wearing a helmet when you first start learning these or when you first start trying to take your airs higher, because catching up on the coping or just throwing your equilibrium off can definitely happen, and just to be safe, it's best to wear protective gear that you feel most comfortable with so that you avoid possible injury. Basically, when you do an air, you want to push the power through your legs, but you also want to absorb the power through your legs when you land. So that way you're not creating a bunch of impact on your heels or your joints, and you're not like falling forward or backwards. You're doing a nice compression that's keeping you kind of centered through your body. I would say the most common mistake that people make when they start learning air to fakie is that they land too far forward and they tip forward on their toe stops, and it throws their whole balance off. So learning how to compress through your body is really important to avoid doing those things, so that way you're landing pretty centered. The next important thing to note is when I jump, even if it's on flat ground, I tend to flick through my toes. So the way to get a really nice air, or if you're just doing jumps on the ground in general, if you flick off your toes, it creates a more effortless pop off of your wheels to create distance from the ground. So sometimes I know when I was learning how to just do jumps in general, I was trying to just pick up my feet both like straight off the ground like this, and that's not the most efficient way. It makes you work a lot harder to have to do that. So I like to think about flicking off the toes, and it's more of this kind of action than just straight up from your wheels. It's more from your front wheels. Don't get too hung up on that part for now. Just keep that in your mind that you will get better airs if you kind of flick off your front wheels instead of all four at the same time. For me, at this point, it's just a subconscious or muscle memory action that I do. It's not something that I consciously am thinking about anymore, but it did help me when someone pointed out to me that you do get a better air when you flick off the toes. So now when you start learning how to do your air, it is totally okay to start under the coping. You can start as low on the ramp as you would like, or as high up on the ramp as you're comfortable. It is a little bit easier to do an air to fakie the higher up on the ramp that you are, but if you're not comfortable pumping all the way up to the top of the ramp and giving it a try, that's perfectly okay, and you can go ahead and try as low as you feel comfortable. I like to pump back and forth on a ramp a few times before I do one so that I get a good feel of the ramp. And you want to do your air to fakie on the actual transition. So you don't want to do it on the flat part of the ramp, you want to do it on the transition part of the ramp or the curve, and the action will come in when there's a pause. If you notice when you pump back and forth there's a moment where you pause before you roll back down. So you roll forward on the ramp, there's a moment of pause before you start rolling backwards. That moment of pause is when you want to do your air. That timing is very important. If you jump too early or too late, that will usually throw off your balance because your momentum is already going in a direction that you're not trying to go. So I would practice pumping on the ramp and feeling that pause that I'm talking about and getting used to knowing the timing of that pause. That's when most tricks happen. That's when stalls happen, that's when airs happen, that's when 360s happen, or ideally that's when they happen. So getting used to that pause and learning the timing will help you a lot in not just this trick, but many tricks to come. So now that you have a feel for that pause, now you're going to start picking up your feet. And again, you can do a small distance from the ground or you can do a bigger distance from the ground, whatever you feel comfortable with. When I first started learning these, I started small so that I got used to the feeling, and then I worked my way up to bigger airs. Just make sure that you are compressing through your legs to get the power for the air. You're flicking off your toes and you're doing this at the pause. Once you pump forward on your ramp or on whatever ramp you're skating and you feel that pause, then you want to flick off your toes and pick your feet up simultaneously, not one after the other, but both feet at the same time. So right and left, flick off the toes and pick up your feet, land, and absorb that landing with your legs. Be prepared, of course, to be rolling backwards at this point, and that's why it's so important to be comfortable pumping forward as well as backwards, because you will be skating backwards once you land this air. So be prepared that you're not going to be rolling fakie. If this feels comfortable for you, then you can start taking it up higher. The ideal way to do an air to fakie is where you ride the entire ramp before you make your air. A good friend of mine, Miguel, told me one time when I was working on airs that I want to envision that my wheels have been dipped in paint and I want the wheels to paint the entire ramp before I do my air, because I kept trying to do the air too soon. My timing was wrong. I was jumping too early when I was still in the ramp and I just couldn't figure out how to make my airs higher and do them like I saw some of the more advanced skaters doing, and he told me that I need to envision that I'm painting the ramp. And this advice has helped me a lot over the years, and it's something that I tell a lot of skaters. So you want to try to ride the ramp as much as possible before you do your air. Sometimes I even like to feel my wheels click over the coping before I do the air. This, of course, will give you the highest air possible. It's okay if you don't go all the way up over the coping, but make it your goal if you want to get a really big air to fakie, that you actually skate up the ramp as much as you can and then you do your air. Again, try to stay as centered as possible. Don't lean too far forward or too far backwards so that you don't throw yourself off, but try to stay centered and absorb that landing. Another piece of advice I have to do a bigger air to fakie if you feel like you're just not getting high enough is to tuck your legs. So of course, follow all the steps that I spoke about earlier, of the absorbing and powering through your legs and the flicking off the toes and trying to wait as long as possible so that you ride up the whole ramp before you do your air. But also, the higher up you tuck your knees towards your body, the higher your air is going to be. So it's almost like you're doing a squat in the air, except you're bringing your knees up towards you instead of you bringing yourself down to your knees, if that makes sense. So I like to kind of envision like I'm a little cannonball, and you know, like when you run to go into the pool and you do a cannonball to make a big splash, it's very similar to that. You're bringing your knees up to your body. Like I said, you can bring them up forward towards your chest. You can kind of tweak them out to the side, but tucking your knees in and bringing them up towards yourself is going to give you a bigger air. Now, where you place your legs is personal preference. It's also variations of the air, and they have different names for these leg placements. I don't know them all, and I tend to not get hung up on trick names, but if you tuck your legs up at the same time, both in front of you, that would be different if you kind of turned your knees to the side and your feet were also to the side. So there are different air variations, but do what feels comfortable for you to start, and then you can start playing around with different placements. Just have fun with it. I like to do different variations, try new things that I've never done before. Also trying different grabs. You can grab your outside skate or grab your other outside skate across your body. You can grab both skates with both hands. You can also grab underneath you or behind you. There's all sorts of different grabs and different leg placements to make variations, but they're endless, so just have fun with them. People are creating new things all the time or just trying to create wild shapes, and that's why it's one of my favorite tricks. I would love to hear where everyone's at with their air to fakie progress, so please let us know in the comments. And if there's a different trick that you would like to learn a tutorial on, please let us know. We do love hearing your feedback and trying to put out videos that everyone is looking for. Like I said, air to fakie is one of my personal favorite tricks, so I would definitely be interested to see how everyone feels with this trick. If you feel comfortable doing it, if you've already been doing it, and how you like to do it. And if there's something that's helped you, please let everyone know in the comments, because it is helpful to get advice from different people. Keep an eye out for more tutorials down the road. We're always making fun videos for everyone. Again, we love to hear what you want to see, so let us know. And in the meantime, happy skating, good luck, and go get those air to fakies.